Hi there, welcome to the podcast series, The Role of Coaching in HR. I'm Colin Newbold, and in this series I feature the backroom stars of HR. These are people officers in medium-sized organisations who are quietly making it easier for their employers to achieve success. Now, many of them will be new to you, and in each episode I invite them to share their story and some of the challenges they've overcome in their journey so far. Now, the series is sponsored by the coaching platform findmecoaches.com, and so I also get my guests talking about what coaching they may have received, how they've used coaching in their careers, and how coaching is being deployed inside their organisation. I really hope you enjoy it. Let the episode begin. So welcome to the podcast. This is a podcast series which features stars of HR, and the series is known as the role of coaching in HR. So we'll get into that during our conversation. But I wanted to introduce you to my speaker, who is Gent Shala, and I want Gent to make himself known to our audience in the way that somebody who knows him well, perhaps a colleague, would introduce him. So, Gent, I'm going to give the floor to you.
Hi, Colin, and thanks a lot for the invitation. Just to make it clear for the audience, the camera I know is right there, but I need to have this conversation by looking at you, so that's why I'm looking at the screen. So, knowing my funny and witty colleagues, I'm not sure it would be a good idea to let them introduce me, but I think, nevertheless, I think most of them would agree that for an HR, sometimes I can be too funny or too playful, but at the same time, kind of blunt, as an HR should be. So it's quite an interesting mix. But for the audience, like you mentioned, I'm from a small country. We call it with a big heart, called Kosovo. And I am 33 years old, and I currently have 10 years of experience in mainly people operations, what we call HR. And also, we are going to discuss actually the distinction between the two, or let's say the transcendence from HR to people operations. And during this time, I've had quite a lot of experience in employer branding, and that relates to my education, which we are going to discuss, I believe. I've mainly had work with the Balkan regions, as well as, mainly with countries like Switzerland, Germany, Canada, and the Balkans. I've had little experience to the US market, which was quite an interesting experience and a very different dynamic. Currently, I'm engaged in several activities. I serve as head of people operations for Numarics, which is a Swiss fintech company, and quite well known right now. It has gotten quite a few awards in the last couple of years. I currently also have my own HR company, as well as an HR academy. And we are in the process of creating our own HR software for the Balkan regions called POP HR. And POP stands for People Optimization Platform. So that, I think, had a quite good ring to it. So.
Cool. So tell me about some of the differences you experienced when you mentioned America.
Oh, so when you work for an American client, there is no such thing as a no answer, and I mean that in a good way, because they are quite pushy and they don't mind pushing back. They know most of the time what they want, and most of the time what the result is. And the difference, I might say, and again, this comes from, let's say, different perspectives, but to my experience, working with the US market has always been a different experience, mainly due to, let's say, embracing the technological, let's say, advancements. Whereas most countries in Europe are, let's say, a little bit more stubborn to get into that, boat where the latest developments are getting at. So they are more reserved, so to say. They play it more safe. I mean, we understand it has its, let's say, pros and cons, but for the most part, change is slow. And especially when it comes to change management or restructuring, or let's say in the terms of implementing a new process that involves a major shift in technology, it usually takes quite a lot of time. And to my experience with the US market and also the Canada, I mean, it's quite similar. So in this perspective, there's a difference. So how we would embrace, let's say, a certain process, and how would that work for each market, and what wouldn't work for the other. So
interesting. So the Balkan states, you feel, are less embracing of new technologies and new ideas. Would that be fair?
I mean, actually, I would say the Central European countries. I mean, yeah, for the most part, the Balkan countries, I mean, they lack quite a lot in, let's say, standardization. I mean, pure structuring into the work that they do, but they are quite open to embracing new technological developments.
Okay. More than
Yeah,
Central Europeans.
yeah.
That
So
struggle there.
we have seen this with Germany, Switzerland, and we could understand from a cultural point of view. So mainly with that, yeah.
I've seen that in France too. So yeah,
Yeah.
I get it. Okay. So talk about your chief people officer role. How did you get into that? What was your career path that led to that?
Oh, it's quite interesting because I'd like to consider myself as, let's say, a multifunctional career. I started my career in marketing and design communications. To the young people that are watching us, the father of the famous singer Dua Lipa. So when I was 18, his name is Dugajin. So Dugajin opened his own advertising agency, and I had the biggest of luck of getting there as an intern. And it was quite interesting to see myself working with very big projects. And my focus mainly for the early years in advertising and marketing agencies was creating clear, effective processes and frameworks. So anything that needed to be explained through a document or a campaign, how this should work, or how to explain something with very little words, that was my job in most of the cases. And over time, I realized that the real impact of these systems was on the people using them, which actually led to my shift, actually to focus on HR, specifically recruiting, training, and employer branding, which I'd like to call HR marketing, basically. So my marketing experience has been invaluable in shaping how organizations present themselves, both internally and externally. And now, as a people operations consultant, I really tend to concentrate on business development and strengthening the employer brands of those businesses. And this is especially on startups, but also on companies that actually had quite a fast emerging in the market. So, I mean, they had quite to no little time to work on the things that they should have been working parallelly to the, let's say, revenue or the sales and everything. And so we always emphasize practical, trust-building approaches, especially when it comes to coaching as well. And we sometimes embrace this, what we learned in the very early years of getting trained as master trainers from the GIZ, which is a German organization, we usually use the four-step method. So it is quite a famous method in Germany, which really focuses on the process, the approach, and trusting on people. And I mean, one of the major challenges we, or me personally, I've faced in HR is aligning strategic goals with employees to their day-to-day realities. So I'm sure we've seen in the past 15 years, there's a major change on the labor market. There's very different needs. So you have partly this workforce who might be above 40 in age, which have very different needs, which have, I might say, very different mindsets. And then you have plus 30, and then you have the current labor force, which we can say plus 16 or plus 18, depending on the country. And aligning all of these with all of the, let's say, age gaps and all of the mindsets and all of the needs, it's quite hard. But to my experience, I think one of the ways to overcome this is that focus on clear communication and, let's say, practical implementation involving employees as early as possible, and also iterating any kind of change you want to do based on their feedback. Because usually companies and big organizations are a little bit of, let's say, reluctant to listen to what everyone has to say. And I understand why, because you can't always satisfy anyone, and you can't, let's say, make everyone's wish come true. But at some point, you have to listen. And to my experience, that has been quite good so far. I mean, aligning groups with one another. And another challenge is maintaining engagement during this change. Because we still, especially in the Balkans regions, I mean, the silo approach is quite prevalent. So many of the teams are reluctant to change, and usually when it comes to knowledge sharing, they want to keep it for themselves because, I mean, if you look back on the history, I mean, we've been quite for so many years on this survival mode. So that is quite deeply rooted in our, let's say, DNA to, hey, I want to have the upper edge. And that means in this era, information. So if I have information that you don't, then I'm going to be...
That's my power.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, that changed quite a while back. That changed with the introduction of internet, with the introduction of basically open knowledge. But that mindset is still stuck there, and that's especially stuck with the people that have institutionalized knowledge, or let's say expertise in a certain work that they do. And it's quite difficult to change this. But I mean, we try to address this by fostering trust. We try to ensure that the internal culture aligns with the values that we promote internally and externally. Most of the companies right now, which this wasn't the case 10 years ago, most of the companies, they promote first the values that they have and then whatever else. So that's a big change. And yeah, I mean, in addition to that, the same challenge applies with the top to bottom approach sometimes, meaning that the management, which sometimes can be quite a pushback. Sometimes let's say the expert or the coach has to come up with a solution and push the management back as well. And, take up the courage and say, look, this is wrong. And if you want to do this, then it's either going to be this or that, and not like putting them into, let's say, in a black and white solution, but Still, most of the time, some things go unnoticed because there's no courage to push back. So, I mean, people get hired for their expertise and for a job to do, and most of the time we should let them. So, yeah.
Very interesting. I think the other challenge that I've certainly faced working with lots of clients over the last 30 years is how the values, while they may well be very clear and well stated, they're not always being lived, certainly at the top of the organization. And
Exactly.
people
Yeah.
see that disconnect. Have you
hmm
found that in any of your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is, the approach of fake it till you make it sometimes can backfire because some people might fake a certain value but act differently when a certain situation happens. So there's this, I mean, there's a lot of cases where, I mean, a leader of the company comes and says, well, we promote transparency, but they micromanage quite a lot, and they try to overdo with systems and with the checkups, and so I've seen this quite a lot, to be honest, and this is a real problem as well in this case. So
Are you able to raise that challenge at the top?
most of the time it depends how open and how I mean, yeah, how open is the leader to let go of the ego? Because most of the time, ego gets in the way. And to understand that it's not about him or her, but it's about the company. And
Mm.
most of the time, the role of the HR, which I understand that most of the time, HR is hated from both sides. They get pushed back by the employees and they get pushed back by the management. But the thing is, most of the time the HR doesn't take the side of the employee or the employer. The role of the HR should be looking after the company and the interest of the company. And in those cases, the HR must make it clear to the leader, or let's say to the management, that, guys, this is about the company. It's not about you. It's much bigger than you. And at the end of the day, we're not yet in the era where we have a robotic era where you can very easily, I mean, not all, but most of the workforce you can replace with the robots. We're not there yet. And companies are made by people. I mean, that's something that leaders have to really take care of.
Mm. Nicely stated. Thank
Yeah.
you. Interesting route that you've taken to get into it, HR. I
Yeah.
hadn't appreciated that. That's very interesting. Now, you know that this podcast series is funded by the coaching platform findmecoaches.com. So I'd like to ask, what is your experience of coaching? Have you had a coach personally as well as inside your current organization?
I did. And I really have to attribute my career growth, like mainly to the coaches that I've had, especially in HR. I got into HR by a person that trusted in me, and he didn't trust for the knowledge that I had in HR because I was maybe doing HR functions, but I wasn't. Doing, let's say, a standardized HR position. But what the at the time, I would like to call him coach. What the coach said to me, his name is Besnik. He said, "Look, I like your values, and I like what you believe in. The rest can be taught." And
Mm.
he taught me how to do things. And what's interesting is that he taught me how not to do some things. And that has been quite central to my growth, both personally and within companies. And I find the role of the coach pivotal to anyone's success. So, personally, what I do is I always try to see my boss as my coach. So
Mm.
that's one way which I implore younger, let's say, people coming into the job market. I always tell them, don't look at your boss as your boss. Look at him as your coach. So whatever, pardon my French, whatever shit he's giving you, just take that in and take it as directions. And of course, as constructed criticism. So I personally also focus on making coaching practical and relevant. I try to simplify very complex conversations or tasks into very clear, very simple, let's say, break down things. And I've also, I mean, to what I believe, and especially platforms like findmecoaches.com, like you've been developing, are really game changers, because they do provide easy access to the right coaching talent, which, let's say, if I was going back in time, I would never have the chance to access this. And right now you can. And also, most of the time, companies that are struggling to find the right people or the right person to coach them into something very specific that they have most of the time just a goal, they have no idea where to turn to. So most times, I mean, people with 30 years of experience, they are saying, look, I need an expert on this. I have no idea where to get one. I've searched on Google, I've searched on that, but there's like not this one platform where you can get this kind of expertise. And I think this is quite crucial for also fostering a culture of continuous improvement in let's say, today's fast-paced work environment. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, coaching in terms of receiving it and giving it, it has been pivotal to my career growth. And I think this is going to continue as long as I'm going to be working. And I would say to anyone looking to, let's say, have an exponential growth, don't overcome it so easy. Overlook it, let's say. Sorry, that's the right word. So,
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So interesting. I love that idea of in a sense, inviting your boss to be your coach, because I think by doing so, stating that early on, as an employee, you are bringing out the best side of them.
Exactly.
They'll know what coaching is supposed to be, and how it's supposed to work, what it sounds like. They don't always use that approach. And I think by inviting them to do so, it probably does involve the best side of that boss. So well done. Yeah, it's a really good point. You've described a lot of the benefits of coaching too. And I think one of the reasons why, I pioneered this FMC business is so that we could start to democratize coaching, because up until now it's been the reserve of the very senior management, partly because of the cost of it, but also because it just wasn't seen as something that was accessible to the lower ranks. So we're on a mission to change that.
Exactly. Yeah.
If my still final question to you, Gent, is if you had a magic wand, Harry Potter wand, what would you like to see happening in human resources that isn't happening currently?
Oh, that's a great question. I really wish I had one. But if I had one, first and foremost, I would say, I mean, we work quite a lot on career path development. And this is quite a hard thing to develop based on the maturity of the company, or basically how big the company is. But I would say, first and foremost, personalized development pathways. And what I mean is that employees often have to fit into this predefined role, or let's say a predefined career path, which can really impede growth. And let's say if I had the wand, we would create a personalized development pathway tailored to each of the employees, or let's say a team's strengths, passions, career goals. And this could actually be supported by AI now and real-time data. And this is something that what a coach could actually steer. So what they only need is a direction, is a path. So this is one of the ways that I would actually try to do. The second is I would say genuine work-life integration. So we need to have a distinction between integration and balance, because usually we listen to work and life balance, which often implies a separation between work and personal life. I'd like to see a shift toward, let's say, work-life integration in the means of flexible schedules, remote work options, and resources that support employees mentally and physically in terms of health, making, let's say, the workplace a true extension of their lives, that rather than only like a compartmentalized necessity. So if I got the word right. This is something, especially after COVID, we need to look at. Personally, I'm against of 100% remote work in every company. It's not going to work. You cannot foster a culture and, let's say, a value-based approach without getting to know one another and being face-to-face. But we do need to integrate this with the lives of people without constraining them just to a certain, let's say, 9 to 5, and that's it, like a chunk block. So that's something I would definitely change. And maybe the last one, and I think most of the time, mental health and well-being in many companies is being treated as a priority. And right now, I mentioned that when it comes to HR in a company, we have to always look out for different cultures and different age gaps. So the current new age, every one of them, or let's say most of them, they are always trying to prioritize well-being. We have never seen before companies introducing yoga classes into the company, which they do in the past 10, 15, some of them maybe 20 years. So they are regularly introducing yoga classes. They are having more and more advanced well-being programs. Most of them, they are starting to offer it as a base benefits package. So this hasn't been done before, and this, I think, is quite good, especially in countries that are emerging, and they need to understand that burnout is a real thing, and having, let's say, your body and your mind being taken care of is going to result in a better productivity, better creativity, better ideas and everything. So this is something I would really wish every company would foster. So, I mean, and there's a lot of other topics, maybe bias-free recruitment and promotions, or transparency and fair compensation. But yeah, that's sometimes just only wishful thinking because there are many things at play. But I would actually put like those three on top.
Okay, thank you. I think the last one, the introduction of yoga classes, I've heard of meditation classes, I've heard of mindfulness classes. In a way, that embodies that whole concept that you've described as work-life integration. I mean, that is an example of that.
Absolutely.
And as you say, there is a move for more people to come back together in the workspace. I think that is a necessity now. And my partner works in recruitment, and she's seeing the shift, in that area. And I think that's right. Not a whole, 7 days a week in the office, 5 days a week in the office, but the balance is more of an integration than a separation, and I think that's fantastic. point.
Absolutely.
Those are three great wishes.
Yeah.
And the good news is they're happening. So we're seeing more and more evidence of that. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, again, I really appreciate the time you've given us on the podcast. I really enjoyed that. I wish you ever such a lot of success with this, the platform you're building. That sounds exciting. And with your role in the people business, it sounds great. And I thank you for, spending time with us to share that story of yours.
Absolutely. And thank you. I mean, this also has taken me back through my career, and it was humbling to actually see myself, let's say a flashback of myself 10 years ago, and seeing how everyone who guided me and coached me impacted my success and my career and everything. And I actually would like, lastly, to quote a really nice author. The name is Susan Fowler. She wrote the book, What Motivates Employees and What It Doesn't. And she mainly listed 3 points, and it's autonomy. So basically the empowering feeling of being in charge of your own choices and actions, relatedness. So let's say that intrinsic motivation to connect meaningfully with others. And the last one is competence, the feeling of being effective and capable in your own work. And I think in quite so many ways, coaches can give you that. So they have to trust you to give you autonomy in what you're going to do. They have to guide you through the process that you're fully capable of doing that, and they have to trust you with that. And it has to be meaningful, and especially with the competence. They make you competent in your work. So it's quite a really good distinction to what she wrote and to what a coach does. So.
I will read the book. I hadn't heard of the author.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I've made a note.
Yeah.
That's really good. Thank you again. Really appreciate it. All the best for the future. And
thank you, Colin.
We'll see you again.
Absolutely. This was a real pleasure. So hopefully we'll see you again. Thank you.
Thank you again. Well, I hope you enjoyed that insight into my guest and their organization and the role of coaching there. Now, the series is sponsored by the coaching platform findmecoaches.com. And if you want to find out more about how you can access our community of coaches, then I invite you to check out our website at www.findmecoaches.com. Or you can email info@findmecoaches.com. Or why not call us on +44 if you're outside the UK, and then 0203 988 6666. Thanks for watching.